The broke one is driving the nicer car. Watch what happens at this red light. In the front, Peter is tapping the steering wheel of a leased German sedan. It has chrome rims, a watch on his wrist that cost $3,100, and a $900 monthly payment he never mentions out loud. 4 cars behind him, Lara is sipping coffee from a dented thermos in a 2014 Camry with 190,000 miles on it. There's a coffee stain on the passenger seat that survived longer than 2 of her phones. You look at both of them, and your brain instantly files them into categories. Peter is winning. Lara is just getting by. Except one of them is only 1 bad month away from financial collapse, and it isn't the woman driving the Camry. Quietly, Lara has more money than her own dentist. My name is Isaac, and I spend way too much time thinking about why we get this completely backwards. Because this isn't really a video about cars. It isn't even a video about being frugal. It's about what happens to your entire life the moment you stop performing wealth. And I mean everything. The way strangers treat you. The prices companies charge you. Who decides you're worth trusting? The day you stop trying to look rich, a switch flips, and most people never even notice it. So make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to follow that switch all the way down. And somewhere along the way I'm going to tell you about a Federal Reserve study that found your neighbor winning the lottery can actually push you into bankruptcy. Not them. You. Hold that thought. Let's start with the part that should genuinely annoy you. The entire visual language of wealth is a lie we've all agreed to believe. When 2 researchers, Stanley and Danko, surveyed thousands of American millionaires, they expected the obvious. Imported cars, tailored suits, luxury watches. Instead, they found something that should make the rest of us a little uncomfortable. Half of the millionaires they studied had never spent more than $399 on a suit. The median price of the most expensive watch they had ever purchased was only $235, and the most common car brand among American millionaires wasn't Mercedes, it wasn't BMW, it was Toyota. Let me say that again, because every time I mention it, people assume I got it wrong. The typical millionaire drives the same brand of car as the assistant manager at your local grocery store. They wear a department store watch. Meanwhile, the person sitting across the restaurant in a brand new leased convertible with a 5,000 miles watch is statistically far more likely to be drowning financially than the man in the off, the rack blazer who quietly owns 3 laundromats. You might be thinking, sure, Isaac, that was the 90s. Things are different now. They aren't. If anything, the modern numbers make the picture even worse. According to Experian automotive data, 61% of households earning more than $250,000 a year don't drive a luxury brand at all. They drive Toyotas, Hondas, Fords, just like everyone else. So who's buying all the luxury cars? Mostly people who can't really afford them. Households earning under $100,000 buy more than twice as many luxury vehicles as genuinely high-income households. That badge on the hood isn't a reliable signal of wealth. More often, it's a sign of a large monthly payment attached to an ordinary income. Here's the statistic I think should be printed on every dollar bill. A 2025 Goldman Sachs survey found that 41% of people earning between $300,000 and $500,000 a year describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck, on $400,000 a year. That's actually a higher rate than people earning between $50,000 and $100,000. The people who appear the most successful are often outspending the middle class. And if that doesn't make sense yet, stay with me. Because the mechanism behind it is one of the most human behaviors you'll ever see. And it's almost certainly affecting you right now. It has a boring name. Lifestyle creep. But the way it works is much sneakier than the name suggests. There's an idea from the 1700s called the Diderot effect. It's named after a French philosopher who received one beautiful scarlet robe. Suddenly, his old desk looked shabby next to the robe. So he replaced the desk. Then the chair no longer matched. Then the artwork on the walls felt out of place. Eventually, he spent himself into debt, all because one beautiful robe quietly changed his definition of normal. That's the entire engine. You get promoted. You buy a nicer car. Now your apartment suddenly feels embarrassing, so the apartment has to go. Then the furniture doesn't match. Then the vacations have to match the furniture. Every upgrade quietly resets your definition of what's normal. And normal eventually becomes the most expensive thing you'll ever buy. That's the first trap. The standard never stops moving. But underneath it sits a second trap. And it's the reason you can't buy lasting satisfaction, because almost none of it makes you happy for very long. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, and honestly, it's deeply unfair. You buy something new, you get a burst of excitement. A few weeks later, your brain shrugs R and treats it as completely normal. The sports car becomes just the car. The dream kitchen becomes just the kitchen. So you start chasing the next emotional high. The treadmill speeds up. But you never actually get anywhere. You simply spend more money to stand in exactly the same emotional place. And nowhere is that treadmill more efficient than the car you're probably sitting in right now. Let me paint a picture of how the looking rich economy actually charges people. The average new car payment in America has climbed to around $767 a month. Nearly 1 in 5 new car buyers now signs a loan with payments of more than $1,000 every month. To make those payments seem manageable, dealerships stretch loans out to 84 months. 7 years. You'll still be making payments on that car when it's old enough to be in second grade. Here's where the story goes from depressing to genuinely dangerous. Because those loans last so long and cars lose value so quickly, roughly a third of people trading in a vehicle today owe more than the car is actually worth. They're underwater. And the average person in that situation is carrying more than $7,000 in negative equity. So what happens? That $7,000 gets rolled into the next loan, on top of the price of the next car. The result? Average payments climb above $900 a month. This is Peter. This is exactly the financial hole he's standing in at that red light. He's making payments on a car he no longer owns just so he can drive a car he already can't afford. If that sounds like a financial horror movie, that's because it is. And every showing is sold out. Here's the part that really gets me. Nobody at the dealership is technically lying to you. They've simply become incredibly good at selling you a number that isn't the real number. You walk in thinking about a $40,000 car. From that moment on, they make sure you never think about $40,000 again. Instead, they talk about monthly payments, because a monthly payment feels small. A total price feels scary. Is the payment too high? No problem. We'll stretch the loan another year. Concerned about negative equity. We'll hide it inside the next loan. You'll barely notice. Every logical objection your brain raises gets smoothed away with one more year of payments. They're not really selling you a car. They're selling you a feeling. Financed at 9% over 84 months. The same thing is happening at the smaller end of the economy too. There are now companies that let you split a fast food meal into 4 payments. You can finance a burrito. Last year, a huge percentage of people buying Coachella tickets paid through installment plans, putting down as little as a $50 just to stand in a field. And then I came across a statistic that genuinely stopped me. A survey found that 25% of people using Buy Now, Pay Later apps were using them to buy groceries. Groceries. If you have to finance eggs and bread in 4 installments, I promise you, the problem isn't the eggs. The problem is the 900 payment sitting in your driveway. Now let's close the loop I opened earlier. I told you I'd explain how your neighbor winning the lottery can actually push you toward bankruptcy. This wasn't a theory. It was a real study using real bankruptcy records in Canada, published through the Federal Reserve. Researchers looked at neighborhoods where someone won the lottery. Then they watched what happened to the people living nearby. What they discovered is one of the most disturbing findings in personal finance. The larger the lottery prize, the more likely the neighbors were to go bankrupt, not the winner. The neighbors. A bigger jackpot next door measurably increased the likelihood that nearby households would eventually file for bankruptcy. And here's what proved it had everything to do with appearances. When researchers examined what those bankrupt neighbors had been spending money on, it wasn't savings. It wasn't investments. It wasn't retirement accounts. It was the highly visible stuff. Cars, boats, motorcycles. When the Joneses suddenly became richer, the neighbors didn't try to become wealthier. They tried to look wealthier, and that decision bankrupted them. That's the entire disease in a single sentence. And it's exactly what Peter is doing at that red light. He's not competing against his own bank account. He's competing with whoever pulls up beside him. And that race never ends, because someone will always be sitting one lane over in something newer. Now let me show you Lara's road, because the math is almost insulting in its simplicity. Imagine that same $700 monthly car payment. Instead of spending it, invest it every month into a simple index fund. Then forget it exists, assuming a normal long-term return. 30 years later, that single redirected payment grows to roughly $850,000. Increase the return just a little, and it crosses $1 million. Exactly the same money. One path buys a lifetime of depreciating cars and constant financial stress. The other buys Lara a paid-off home, and something much more valuable. The ability to walk into her boss's office in her 40s and say, no. She can refuse the promotion with longer hours because she already knows the numbers. She doesn't need it. That coffee-stained Camry didn't just buy her transportation. It bought her the freedom to say no. That's not an income difference. It's a difference in what she chose to look like. And here's the part of that math that almost nobody talks about enough. When you're young, the rate of return on your investments matters far less than people think. What matters much more is your savings rate, the percentage of your income that you actually keep. Someone who saves half of what they earn can often reach financial freedom in less than 2 decades, regardless of what the stock market does. Why? Because they need so little to maintain their lifestyle, while they're building wealth at an incredible pace. The real game in your 20s and 30s isn't finding the perfect investment. It's doing the unglamorous work of not spending the money in the first place. And the cruelest part of all is timing. If you wait just 5 years before you start investing, you don't simply lose 5 years of contributions. You lose all the growth those early dollars would have generated for the rest of your life. One example always sticks with me. Start investing a few $100s every month at age 30, and you could end up with close to $1 million by retirement. Start with the exact same monthly investment at age 35, and you may finish hundreds of thousands of dollars behind. Same habit, same amount, just 5 years later. Roughly a 300 Zalozan difference. The money you invest in your 20s is the most powerful money you'll ever invest. Yet almost nobody treats it that way. Because when you're young, looking poor feels like you're failing. Want the clearest example on earth? Warren Buffett. He's been one of the richest people alive for decades, yet he still lives in the Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives himself around. He still eats a McDonald's breakfast that costs only a few dollars. The founder of IKEA drove the same Volvo for 20 years. He bought clothes from flea markets. He openly described himself as stingy, and he was proud of it. These people could afford a different mansion every day of the week. Yet by the standards we've been taught, they almost look poor. That's not an accident, that's the clue. Looking rich and actually being rich are often complete opposites. Sometimes the costume itself is the confession. By the way, this is easily the question people ask me more than any other. Some version of, okay, Isaac, I understand the idea. But how do I actually move from Peter's path to Lara's path without relying on endless self-discipline? That's exactly why I built our school community. We walk through the real budgets, the redirected payments, the simple, boring math that quietly builds wealth. Some members have even used these ideas to build successful faceless YouTube channels of their own. If you're interested, the link is in the description. No pressure, no urgency. This entire video is the demonstration. Now let's make the story a little more complicated. Because if I stopped here, I'd only be telling the comfortable half of the truth. Looking poor by choice can absolutely become a financial advantage. But actually being poor is one of the most expensive situations you can be in. And this is where everything becomes much darker. Because the same system that rewards wealthy people for living modestly often punishes those who have no choice. Economists call it the poverty premium, and it's brutal. Suppose you're struggling financially and need a small loan just to make rent. A payday lender will happily lend you the money, at annual interest rates approaching 400%. If your credit score has been damaged and you need a car just to get to work, the exact same loan that costs a wealthy borrower around 5% might cost you 16%, 18%, or even 20%, 3 times the cost, for exactly the same car. And if traditional financing isn't available at all, the rent-to-own store steps in. A couch that sells for a few $100s at retail suddenly costs 2 or even 3 times as much. Paid one weekly installment at a time, until you've spent nearly $400 on a television worth only $200. Think about how backwards that system is. The people least able to afford paying more are the ones charged the highest prices. Not because the product is different, simply because a computer labels them as risky. To borrow money cheaply, you first have to convince lenders that you don't need to borrow money. Banks often seem willing to hand you an umbrella only when the sun is shining. For people at the bottom, the entire financial system works in reverse. And that's a huge reason climbing out of poverty is so much harder than people who've never experienced it usually imagine. The same thing shows up in places you can't avoid. Take car insurance. In many areas, 2 drivers with identical cars and identical driving histories can pay dramatically different premiums simply because of differences in credit scores or ZIP codes. Lower credit, a tougher neighborhood, and suddenly you're paying more than 2.5 times what someone across town pays for the exact same coverage. In other words, you're charged extra simply because you already have less. More than a century ago, economist Thorstein Veblen wrote about this phenomenon. He noticed that wealthy people often bought expensive items precisely because those items signaled wealth. He called it conspicuous consumption. What he didn't spend much time discussing was the opposite side of the equation. The poor often pay an automatic poverty tax just for appearing financially risky. And looking poor changes far more than your interest rates. Research has repeatedly shown that identical shoppers receive different treatment depending only on how they're dressed. People wearing polished, expensive-looking clothes are consistently served faster and treated more warmly. Dress casually in an upscale store, and you're much more likely to be quietly ignored. Some people even refer to this as the pretty woman effect. So here's the uncomfortable reality. Looking poor by choice when you're financially secure is freedom. Looking poor because you have no choice costs you money, respect, and patience you can barely afford to lose. The wealthy have figured out how to adopt a modest appearance while keeping an enormous financial safety net underneath it. Which brings us to today. Because this exact tension is playing out on your phone every single day. There's an entire movement online built around underconsumption. Young people proudly showing off their old phones, their 5-year-old sneakers, their refusal to constantly buy the newest version of everything. There's also loud budgeting. People openly telling friends they're staying home because they're saving money. On paper, this may be one of the healthiest financial trends we've seen in a generation. At the very same time, though, a survey found that 43% of Gen Z report experiencing what's now being called money dysmorphia. No matter what their bank account actually looks like, they constantly feel broke and behind. Not because of reality. Because they're comparing their real lives to social media feeds carefully designed to make everyone else appear as though they've already made it. And here's the final twist. The one that catches even people who think they've escaped the game. The wealthy saw people turning away from flashy logos, so they simply changed the uniform. The new status symbol is quiet luxury. No obvious branding. Just a plain sweater that quietly costs $2,000, recognizable only to the people who already know what they're looking at. It appears modest, but it isn't modest at all. It's exactly the same status game, only played with the volume turned down. And it might actually be the most expensive version of the game yet, because now you're paying enormous amounts of money specifically so nobody realizes you spent enormous amounts of money. There isn't a costume that wins. That's the real secret. The entire competition over looking like the right amount of wealthy is rigged. The only way to win is to stop playing. Now I can already hear the objection. I hear it every time. But Isaac, appearances matter. I work in sales. My clients judge me. I can't show up driving an old beater. Fair enough. Some careers genuinely require a certain level of presentation. Sometimes appearance really is part of the paycheck. But be honest with yourself about where that line actually is. There's a huge difference between maintaining a clean, professional appearance that helps you do your job, and financing a luxury status symbol that quietly drains your future simply so a stranger in a parking lot gives you 4 seconds of admiration before forgetting you exist forever. One is a tool, the other is a voluntary tax. The wealthy figured out exactly how little of the costume they actually need. Then they invested the difference into the part nobody else could see, the part they actually own. So let me give you permission to do something that quietly terrifies most people. You're allowed to look like less than you really are. You're allowed to drive the paid-off Camry past the leased German sedan and feel absolutely nothing. Because you know your bank balance, and the other driver knows theirs. Only one of you is sleeping peacefully at night. You're allowed to let people underestimate you. In fact, you should welcome it, because every dollar you don't spend trying to convince strangers that you're successful becomes another dollar actually making you successful. Remember Peter and Laura at that red light? 1 year later, Peter is trading in the sedan. He's still about $7,000 underwater. He's rolling that debt into yet another loan, still looking like he's winning. Laura is still driving the same Camry. The coffee stain is still there. But she quietly crossed another milestone inside her brokerage account. A number Peter may never reach at the pace he's going. Nobody waiting at that traffic light will ever know. That's the entire point. She traded applause for freedom, and applause was never going to pay her bills anyway. Looking poor was never the goal. It's simply what financial confidence often looks like from the outside when you no longer feel the need to prove anything. So drive the boring car, wear the inexpensive watch. Let people underestimate you all the way to the bank. And if you want the complete playbook, The simple, boring, beautiful math that transforms a Peter into a Laura. You already know where the door is. That's exactly what our school community is built for. I'll see you there.